Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Defiant, watching the stars through the main screen. His hands gripped the command chair as red warning lights flashed around him. The ship shook as another explosion echoed through the hull. "Captain, we've lost contact with Earth Fleet Command," said Danny Cooper from his position at the navigation station. His young face was pale, but his voice stayed steady. The last message was a surrender order. Jake felt his heart sink. For 3 years, humanity had fought against the Zarathi Dominion. 12 alien species had joined together to destroy every human in the galaxy. They called humans a disease that needed to be wiped out. Now it seemed they had won. "Sir, what are your orders?" asked Lisa Hayes, the chief engineer. She had oil stains on her uniform and looked tired. The Defiant had been running and fighting for weeks without a real break. Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. These people had followed him through hell. Rick Barnes, the security chief, stood ready for action despite the bandage on his arm. Amy Watson, their doctor, was helping an injured officer near the door. They all waited for his decision. "How many people do we have on board?" Jake asked. 847 crew members, Danny said, plus about 200 civilians we picked up from the destroyed colonies. Jake closed his eyes. Over 1,000 lives depended on him. The smart choice would be to find a place to hide until this war ended. But something burned in his chest when he thought about giving up. "Captain," Lisa said quietly, "the quantum drive is damaged, but it still works. We could jump far away from here, find some empty planet and wait." "Wait, for what?" Rick asked, his voice angry. "For the aliens to find us eventually? For them to kill every human left alive?" Amy looked up from the injured officer. "We have medical supplies for maybe 6 months if we're careful, food for the same time if we cut rations." Jake walked to the main screen and stared at the stars. Somewhere out there, the last human evacuation ships were trying to escape. Women, children, families, all running for their lives. The Zarathi fleet was hunting them down one by one. "Sir," Danny said, checking his instruments, "I'm picking up long-range signals. There's a big Zarathi harvesting fleet moving toward the evacuation routes. They're going to catch the civilian ships." The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew what that meant. The aliens didn't just kill humans. They took them apart to study how human brains worked. They wanted to understand what made humans fight so hard so they could make sure no other species would ever be like them. Jake turned back to his crew. "How many ships do the Zarathi have in that harvesting fleet?" Danny's fingers moved over his controls. "At least 300 warships, sir, plus the harvesting vessels." "And we have 1 damaged cruiser," Rick said. "1 damaged cruiser with the best crew in the fleet," Jake corrected. He walked back to his chair and sat down. "Lisa, can you give me full power to weapons?" Lisa looked surprised. "Sir, if we're running, we should save power for the drive." "We're not running," Jake said. His voice was calm, but everyone could hear the steel in it. "Those evacuation ships have families on them. Kids who will never grow up if we don't stop that fleet." Amy stood up from the injured officer. "Captain, we can't fight 300 ships, it's suicide." "Maybe," Jake said. "But what's the alternative? Hide while everyone we swore to protect gets killed? Let the aliens win because the odds are bad?" Rick stepped forward. "I'm with you, Captain. Better to die fighting than live knowing we could have made a difference." Danny turned in his chair. "The evacuation ships are 12 hours away from the Zarathi fleet. If we're going to do something, we need to move now." Lisa sighed and shook her head, but she was smiling a little. "I can give you full power, sir. The quantum drive will let us make short jumps that they can't track. Hit-and-run tactics." "We can't destroy 300 ships," Amy said. "We don't have to destroy them all," Jake said. "We just have to slow them down, confuse them, make them think twice about chasing unarmed civilians." Jake stood up and pressed the ship-wide communication button. His voice echoed through every corridor and room on the Defiant. "This is the captain. By now you all know that Earth has surrendered. Command has ordered all ships to stand down. But I'm not going to follow that order. There are innocent people out there who need our help. The Zarathi think humans are weak because we care about each other. Today we're going to show them that caring makes us stronger, not weaker. He paused, looking at the faces on his bridge. I won't lie to you. This is probably a one-way trip. Anyone who wants to leave can take a shuttle to the nearest neutral planet. No questions asked, no shame in leaving. You all have families and dreams too. The bridge stayed quiet. Throughout the ship, Jake knew people were making the hardest choice of their lives. But if you stay, Jake continued, you'll be part of something important. We're going to prove that humans don't go quietly into the dark. We fight. We protect the weak. We never surrender even when the whole galaxy says we should. Danny spoke first. Navigation ready, Captain. Lisa smiled and wiped her hands on a cloth. Engineering ready, sir. Rick checked his weapon. Security ready. Amy picked up her medical bag. Medical ready to patch everyone up after you boys get us shot to pieces. Jake felt pride swell in his chest. These people were why humans would never really be defeated. They chose to stand together when it mattered most. All right then, Jake said, sitting back in his command chair. Lisa, bring the quantum drive online. Danny, plot a course for the Zarathi fleet. Rick, prepare all weapons. Amy, get ready for casualties. The Defiant turned toward the enemy fleet. One small ship against an army. But they were human, and humans had a long history of doing impossible things. Take us in, Jake ordered. Let's go save some lives. The stars began to move as the Defiant jumped into hyperspace. Behind them, empty space held only the echo of their passage. Ahead lay a battle that would change the galaxy forever. The war was far from over. The Defiant dropped out of hyperspace behind a large asteroid. Jake watched the main screen as the Zarathi harvesting fleet came into view. The alien ships looked like giant metal spiders, their legs reaching out to grab and crush anything in their path. 312 ships, Danny whispered. They're moving in perfect formation toward the evacuation route. How long until they reach our people? Jake asked. 8 hours, sir. Lisa's voice came through the speaker from engineering. Captain, I've been thinking about our quantum drive problem. The damage is making it unstable, but maybe we can use that. We can make micro jumps that appear random. The aliens won't know where we'll show up next. Rick studied the tactical display. Their formation is too tight. They're used to fighting enemies who attack head-on, but if we hit their supply ships at the back... Do it, Jake said. Target their fuel tankers first. Without fuel, those big ships are floating rocks. The Defiant moved quietly through the asteroid field. Jake held his breath as they passed close to several Zarathi patrol ships. The aliens were looking for human evacuation vessels, not a single damaged cruiser hiding in the rocks. There, Danny pointed to the screen. Fuel convoy at the rear of the formation. 6 tankers with only 2 escort ships. Lisa, prepare for micro jump on my mark, Jake said. Rick, target the closest tanker, full missile spread. The ship shook slightly as the quantum drive charged up. Jake could feel the strange energy building in the walls around them. The damaged drive made a grinding sound that wasn't supposed to be there. Jump! Space twisted around the Defiant. For a moment, Jake felt like he was falling through stars. Then they appeared right next to the fuel convoy. The Zarathi ships were so surprised. They didn't react for several seconds. Fire! Jake shouted. Missiles streaked from the Defiant toward the fuel tanker. The explosion lit up space like a small sun. The other tankers tried to turn away, but Rick had already locked onto the second target. Jump again. They disappeared, just as the escort ships started shooting. The Defiant appeared on the other side of the convoy and destroyed 2 more tankers before jumping away again. 4 fuel ships down, Rick reported. The aliens are going crazy trying to figure out where we are. Good, Jake said. Now let's hit their communication array. If they can't talk to each other, they can't coordinate. For the next 6 hours, the Defiant played a deadly game of hit and run. They would appear, attack something important, and disappear before the aliens could fight back. Fuel depots exploded. Communication towers went dark. Supply ships broke apart under missile fire. Amy worked without stopping in the medical bay. The random jumps were hard on the human body, and several crew members got sick from the strange effects. But nobody complained. They all knew what they were doing was important. Captain, Danny said during one of their hiding periods, the main fleet is slowing down. We've destroyed enough fuel that they have to be more careful about speed. How much time did we buy? Jake asked. Maybe 4 extra hours. The evacuation ships should reach the jump point before the Zarathi catch them. Jake felt some relief, but he knew their job wasn't over. What about the harvesting ships? Are they still following the main fleet? Rick checked his instruments. Yes, sir. But I'm reading something strange. They're carrying people, human people. Amy looked up from her medical supplies. Prisoners? Or worse, Rick said quietly. Jake's hands closed into fists. The aliens weren't just hunting humans for sport. They were capturing them alive for their terrible experiments. Somewhere on those ships, human families were being held in cages like animals. How many prisoners? Jake asked. Danny worked at his station for several minutes. Hard to tell exactly, but the ships are reading as if they're carrying a lot of extra weight. Could be thousands of people. The bridge fell silent. Everyone was thinking the same thing. Those weren't just numbers on a screen. They were mothers and fathers, children and grandparents. People who had been torn away from their families and were now heading for a fate worse than death. Sir, Lisa's voice came through the speaker. I'm reading something else. The quantum drive damage is getting worse. We maybe have 6 more jumps before it fails completely. Jake stared at the tactical display. 6 jumps. They could use those to keep hitting supply targets and buy a little more time for the evacuation ships. Or they could try something much more dangerous. Rick, could we rescue the prisoners? Jake asked. Rick studied the display for a long time. The harvesting ships have lighter armor than the warships, but they're in the middle of the fleet. We'd have to fight our way in and out. And we'd have to find a way to get the people off. Those ships, Amy added. Our shuttle bays can't hold thousands of refugees. Danny looked at his captain. Sir, if we try this, we probably won't make it out. The evacuation fleet will be safe, but we'll be dead. Jake looked around at his crew. These people had already done the impossible. They had taken 1 damaged ship and held off an entire alien fleet. They had saved millions of lives with their crazy attacks. No one would blame them for running now. But Jake thought about the faces he couldn't see. Human faces pressed against the walls of alien prison ships. Children crying for their parents. Old people who had lived through wars and peace only to end up in the hands of monsters. We're not leaving those people, Jake said. Lisa, I need you to push the quantum drive past its limits. Danny, plot a course straight through the middle of their fleet. Rick, target the prison ships only. We're going to rescue every human we can. And after that? Amy asked. Jake smiled grimly. After that, we'll figure something out. We always do. The crew moved to their positions. Throughout the ship, people prepared for what might be their final battle. But nobody hesitated. They were human, and humans protected their own. The Defiant charged its damaged quantum drive one more time. The grinding sound was louder now and sparks flew from several control panels. But the ship held together through pure determination and hope. Jump, Jake ordered. They appeared in the middle of the Zarathi fleet like a ghost ship materializing from a nightmare. Alarm signals filled space as 300 alien warships realized that one small human vessel had somehow appeared among them. The rescue mission had begun. The Defiant appeared right next to a massive Zarathi harvesting ship. Jake could see the alien vessel's dark hull covered with strange symbols and tubes that pulsed with sickly light. Through the transparent sections, he caught glimpses of movement. Inside. There. Rick pointed at his screen. I'm reading human life signs, lots of them. Fire on their engines only, Jake ordered. We need that ship intact. Missiles struck the harvesting ship's rear section. The alien vessel shuddered and began to drift, its engines dead. But before Rick could target the next ship, the entire Zarathi fleet opened fire. Jump, now, Jake shouted. The Defiant disappeared as hundreds of energy beams cut through the space where they had been. They reappeared near another harvesting ship, this one even larger than the first. I'm reading over 2,000 human prisoners on this one, Danny said, his voice tight with emotion. Same target pattern, Jake said. Engines only. More missiles flew. The second harvesting ship went dark and began spinning slowly in space. But the Zarathi were adapting to their tactics now. Enemy ships were moving to surround them. "Captain!" Lisa's voice crackled through the speaker. "The quantum drive is overheating. We have maybe 3 more jumps before it explodes. Amy, get our people ready to receive refugees," Jake ordered. "We're going to dock with those disabled ships and get everyone off." Amy ran from the bridge toward the shuttle bays. Jake knew she was organizing medical teams and preparing space for thousands of scared, injured people. The Defiant jumped again, appearing next to the first harvesting ship they had disabled. Danny worked quickly to match their movement and bring them close enough to dock. "Rick, take a security team and get those people out," Jake said. "Be careful, we don't know what the aliens did to them." Rick nodded and ran toward the airlocks. Jake watched through the ship's cameras as armed crew members forced their way into the alien vessel. What they found inside made his heart break. Humans were packed into small cages like animals. Men, women, children, and elderly people all mixed, together in terrible conditions. Many were injured. All of them looked scared and weak from months of captivity. "Get them out of there," Jake said into his communicator. His crew worked like heroes. They carried people who couldn't walk, comforted crying children, and helped families find each other. The shuttle bays filled with rescued humans, their faces showing hope for the first time in months. But the Zarathi weren't going to let them escape easily. Enemy warships were closing in from all sides, their weapons charging for a massive attack. "Captain, we need to go," Danny said. "If we stay here much longer, they'll surround us completely." "How many people are still on the harvesting ship?" Jake asked. Rick's voice came through the radio. "Maybe 300 more, sir, but they're in the deep sections. It'll take time to get them out." Jake looked at the tactical display. The Zarathi ships were almost in position to trap them. If they stayed, everyone would die. If they left, 300 humans would remain prisoners. "Sir," Lisa said, "the quantum drive is critical. We have to jump now, or we'll lose it completely." Jake closed his eyes. This was the hardest choice a captain could make. Save the people they had rescued or risk everyone to save a few more. Then he heard a voice from the rescued refugees. An old man who had been helped onto the bridge was looking at the screen showing the remaining prisoners. "Captain," the old man said, "my grandson is still on that ship. He's only 12 years old." Jake opened his eyes and looked at the man. He saw decades of life in that weathered face. A grandfather who had survived whatever horrors the aliens had put him through, but couldn't bear to leave his family behind. "Danny, can you plot a micro-jump? Something that will put us inside their formation instead of outside it?" "Sir, that's incredibly dangerous. If we appear too close to another ship, can you do it?" Danny's hands moved over his controls. "Yes, sir. But we'll only have seconds before they all fire at us. Lisa, prepare for emergency jump. Rick, get your people back here with everyone you can carry." "Sir, we need 5 more minutes," Rick said. "You have 2, Jake replied. The Defiant shook as Zarathi weapons began hitting their shields. The alien ships were getting closer, their formation tightening like a trap closing. 1 minute, Jake called. Through the cameras, he watched his crew running through the harvesting ship, carrying and dragging the last prisoners toward the airlocks. Children, adults, elderly people, all of them moving as fast as they could. 30 seconds, the shield alarms were screaming now. Several sections of the Defiant's hull were showing damage. If they stayed much longer, the ship would be destroyed and everyone would die. "Sir?" Rick's voice was urgent. "We're at the airlocks with the last group." "Jump!" The Defiant vanished from between the harvesting ships. For a moment, the Zarathi weapons fired at empty space. Then the human ship appeared inside their formation, surrounded by enemy vessels on all sides. "All weapons, fire at will," Jake shouted. The Defiant's guns blazed in every direction. They weren't trying to destroy the alien ships now. They were just trying to create enough confusion to escape. Missiles and energy beams flew past them as the Zarathi tried to avoid hitting their own vessels. "Lisa! Emergency jump! Drive is failing, sir. I don't know if we can make it." The quantum drive made a sound like metal tearing apart. Sparks flew from every control panel on the bridge. The ship shook so hard that Jake was thrown from his chair. But somehow, the Defiant jumped. They appeared in empty space, far from the alien fleet. The main screen showed only stars and darkness. For a moment, nobody spoke. They had done it. They had rescued over 2,000 human prisoners and escaped from the middle of an enemy fleet. Then Amy's voice came through the speaker. "Captain, you need to get down to Medical Bay 3. Jake found Amy treating a young girl who couldn't have been more than 10 years old. The child was unconscious, but her breathing was steady. "What did they do to these people?" Jake asked quietly. Amy looked grim. "Tests, experiments. They were trying to figure out how human brains work, why we think differently from other species." An older woman nearby heard them talking. She was holding the hand of the unconscious girl. "They kept asking us questions," the woman said. "Why do humans fight when they can't win? Why do we help strangers? Why don't we give up when things get bad?" She looked at Jake with tears in her eyes. "I told them it's because we're human. That's just what we do." Jake felt something cold settle in his stomach. The aliens weren't just trying to kill humans. They were trying to understand them. And that meant they saw something in humanity that scared them enough to study it. "Captain," Danny called from the bridge, "we're getting signals from other human ships, small groups that escaped the main battles. They want to know if the stories about us are true." Jake walked back to the bridge, his mind racing. Other survivors, other ships that might be willing to fight. The war wasn't over yet. "What stories?" he asked. Danny smiled for the first time in weeks. "That there's a human ship out there that won't surrender. That's been hitting the aliens so hard they're afraid to travel alone. That rescued 2,000 prisoners from the middle of their own fleet." Jake looked at the rescued humans filling his ship. Children who would grow up free. Adults who would remember that someone came back for them. Families reunited against impossible odds. "Tell them it's true," Jake said, "and ask them if they want to join us, because we're not done fighting yet." The old man who had spoken about his grandson walked onto the bridge. The boy was with him now, weak but alive. "Captain," the old man said, "what you did today, that's why they're so afraid of us. We don't leave our people behind." Jake nodded. "No, we don't. And we never will." Outside, the stars waited. Somewhere in that darkness, more human ships were deciding whether to hide or fight. The Defiant had shown them that fighting was possible. The King's resistance was about to begin. 3 months had passed since the rescue mission. The Defiant no longer traveled alone. Jake stood on the bridge looking at 36 other ships moving in formation around them. Some were human vessels that had survived the initial attacks. Others were captured Zarathi ships now flying under human flags. A few were alien vessels crewed by species that had grown tired of Dominion rule. "Captain," Danny said from his station, "we're getting a priority message from the reconnaissance team." Jake had sent 3 fast ships to scout Earth's solar system. Nobody had heard from humanity's homeworld since the surrender order 3 months ago. "Put it through." The main screen flickered, showing the face of Captain Beth Martinez aboard the scout ship Swift. Her expression was grim. "Jake, you need to see this," she said. "Earth is still there, but it's different. The Zarathi have built massive processing facilities on the surface. They're holding the entire population in camps." "How many people?" Jake asked, though he dreaded the answer. "Best estimate is about 2 billion, maybe more. They're keeping them alive, but Jake, they're doing experiments, just like with the prisoners we rescued." The bridge fell silent. 2 billion people, nearly a third of humanity's total population, trapped on their own world and being used as test subjects. "There's more," Beth continued. "The facilities aren't just research labs. They're factories. The aliens are building something using human brain patterns as templates." "What kind of something?" Jake asked. "We couldn't get close enough to be sure, but our long-range scanners picked up artificial intelligence signatures. They're trying to create computer minds that think like humans." Jake felt sick. The aliens weren't just studying humans. They were trying to copy them, to create artificial beings with human creativity and determination, but without human independence. "How many ships are guarding Earth?" Jake asked. "Over 1,000 Zarathi vessels. plus defense platforms, fighter squadrons, and ground-based weapons. It's the most heavily defended planet in the galaxy. After Beth signed off, Jake called a meeting of all the ship captains in his small fleet. They gathered in the Defiant's main conference room, humans and several alien allies who had joined their cause. One of the alien captains, a tall being named Crix, from a species called the Voltari, spoke first. "Captain Morrison, my people, fought the Dominion for 50 years before they conquered us. I've never seen defenses like the ones around Earth. So we can't attack directly," said Captain Rodriguez from the human ship Ranger. "But maybe we don't need to." Lisa, who had been working almost non-stop on their damaged quantum drive, looked up from her data pad. "I've been analyzing the readings from Beth's scout mission. The processing facilities on Earth need enormous amounts of power. If we could disrupt their energy grid, the facilities would shut down," Jake finished. "But that doesn't help us get 2 billion people off the planet." Amy, who had been treating refugees and alien defectors for months, raised her hand. "What if we don't need to get them all off at once? The camps are holding people, but they're not killing them quickly. We could organize a series of smaller rescues." An alien captain from a species called the Neth spoke up. His name was Xylon, and his people had been enslaved by the Dominion for centuries. The Zarathi use predictable patterns for everything. If we study their schedules, their supply runs, their guard rotations, we could hit them when they're weakest, Rick said, understanding immediately. Small strikes, rescue a few thousand people at a time, then disappear before they can respond. Jake studied the tactical displays they had spread across the table. It would be dangerous, far more dangerous than anything they had attempted so far. But the alternative was leaving 2 billion humans to whatever horrible fate the aliens had planned. How long would it take? Jake asked. Danny worked calculations on his portable computer. If we could rescue 10,000 people per mission and ran one mission per week, it would take almost 4 years. 4 years, Jake repeated. Assuming we don't lose ships. Assuming the aliens don't change their defenses. Assuming we can find places to put 2 billion refugees. The room fell quiet as everyone considered the magnitude of what they were discussing. It seemed impossible, but everything they had done so far had seemed impossible too. There's something else, Lisa said quietly. The quantum drive technology we've been developing, it's not just good for jumping around in battles. I think I can create a communication system that works faster than light across the entire galaxy. Jake looked at her with interest. What does that mean? It means we could coordinate with resistance groups everywhere, instantly. Share intelligence, plan attacks, call for help when we need it. The Dominion has always relied on the fact that their enemies can't talk to each other quickly enough to work together. Crix's eyes widened. If human resistance groups could communicate with Voltari rebels and Neth freedom fighters and all the other species that hate Dominion rule, we could turn this into a galaxy-wide revolution, Xylon said. Jake stood up and walked to the window showing the stars outside. Somewhere among those points of light were billions of beings living under Dominion oppression. Species that had given up hope generations ago. People who had forgotten that freedom was even possible. How long to build this communication system? Jake asked. Lisa looked at her notes. With the resources we have now, maybe 6 months. But if we could capture a few more Zarathi research ships, get their equipment, then that's our new mission, Jake said, turning back to the table. We're going to build Lisa's communication system. We're going to contact every resistance group in the galaxy, and we're going to show them that the Dominion can be beaten. Captain Rodriguez leaned forward. And then? Jake smiled grimly. Then we're going to save Earth. All of it. Every last human. And we're going to do it in a way that sends a message to the entire galaxy. What message? Amy asked. That humans don't abandon their people. That freedom is worth fighting for no matter what the odds. And that when you cage us, study us, and try to break us. Jake's voice grew hard. You only make us more dangerous. Over the next weeks, the small fleet began hitting Zarathi research vessels and communication stations. They captured advanced equipment and freed more prisoners. Not just humans, but members of dozens of species that the Dominion had been experimenting on. Each rescued being brought new knowledge about Dominion operations, weaknesses in their defenses, and locations of other resistance groups. The fleet grew from 37 ships to 60, then to over 100. Lisa worked day and night on the quantum communication system, helped by alien engineers whose species had been working on similar problems for centuries. The breakthrough came when a rescued Neth scientist showed them how to stabilize quantum fields using methods his people had developed in secret. "It's working," Lisa announced one morning. "We're getting responses from resistance groups in 12 sectors." Jake read the incoming messages with growing excitement. A Voltari rebel fleet with 200 ships, Neth freedom fighters who controlled 3 star systems, human survivor groups that had been hiding in remote colonies, even some Zarathi military units that had grown disgusted with Dominion policies. "How many total?" Jake asked. Danny worked at his computer for several minutes. "Sir, if all these groups are accurate in their report, and we're looking at over 3,000 ships and maybe 50 million beings who are ready to fight." Jake stared at the numbers. When they had started, it was just one damaged ship with 1,000 people. Now they commanded a force that could challenge the Dominion's control over entire sectors. But the biggest test was still ahead. Earth waited, heavily defended and full of prisoners. 2 billion humans who had been waiting for someone to come back for them. "Send a message to all resistance groups," Jake ordered. "Tell them the time has come, we're going home." The revolution was about to begin. The largest fleet in galactic history hung in space at the edge of Earth's solar system. 3,000 ships from dozens of species, all united under human leadership. Jake stood on the Defiance Bridge, looking at displays showing their massive force spread across millions of kilometers. "Final count is in," Danny reported. 3,047 combat vessels plus 800 transport ships for evacuations. 52 million beings ready for battle. "And facing us?" Jake asked. 1,200 Zarathi warships around Earth plus orbital defense platforms and ground installations. "But Captain, there's something else. Our scouts report that the Dominion is pulling ships from across the galaxy. They're concentrating everything here for a final battle." Jake nodded grimly. The aliens had realized that this wasn't just about rescuing Earth's population anymore. This was about the future of the entire galaxy. If the Resistance won here, Dominion control would collapse everywhere. Amy's voice came through the intercom. "Captain, the medical teams are ready. We have trauma centers set up on every transport ship, but Jake, 2 billion people is a lot of refugees. Even if we win, where are we going to put them all?" Before Jake could answer, Crix approached from the tactical station. The Voltari captain had become one of Jake's most trusted advisors over the past months. "Captain Morrison," Crix said, "my people have prepared 17 worlds to receive Earth's population. Xylon's Neth rebels have offered 12 more. The other species in our alliance have provided over 40 planets with suitable environments." "That's still not enough," Jake said. "We're talking about rebuilding an entire civilization." Lisa looked up from her engineering station. "Captain, I've been analyzing Earth's industrial capacity from our scout reports. If we can liberate the planet intact, most of the infrastructure is still there. The Zarathi have been using human facilities for their experiments, but they haven't destroyed them." Rick stepped forward from his security post. "Sir, I've been coordinating with resistance cells on Earth's surface. There are still organized human groups down there, hiding in underground networks. They're ready to help when we attack." Jake felt the weight of command like never before. Millions of beings were depending on his decisions. The entire future of freedom in the galaxy might hang on what happened in the next few hours. "All right," Jake said. "Final battle plan. Lisa, can you use the quantum communication system to coordinate all our forces instantly?" "Yes, sir. Every ship in the fleet will know what every other ship is doing in real time. The Dominion has never faced coordination like this." "Rick, what about those surface resistance groups?" "They'll hit the processing facility's power grids at the moment we engage the orbital defenses. Without power, the aliens can't continue their experiments or move the prisoners." Jake walked to the main display showing Earth's blue surface marred by the dark structures the aliens had built. Somewhere down there, 2 billion humans were waiting for rescue. Children who had grown up in captivity. adults who had forgotten what freedom felt like. "Danny, how long until the Dominion reinforcements arrive?" "6 hours, sir. After that, we'll be facing over 5,000 enemy ships." "Then we attack now," Jake decided. "Signal all ships. Operation Homecoming is go." The space around Earth erupted into the largest battle in galactic history. 3,000 resistance ships jumped simultaneously into combat positions, their movements perfectly coordinated through Lisa's quantum communication network. The Zerathi defenders were caught, off guard by the speed and precision of the attack. They had expected a chaotic assault by desperate rebels. Instead, they faced a military force that moved like a single organism with 3,000 deadly parts. Jake watched the tactical displays as human ships dove toward Earth's orbital platforms, while alien allies engaged the Dominion fleet. Explosions lit up space like deadly flowers blooming in the dark. "Surface teams report power grids are down," Rick announced. "The processing facilities have gone dark. Transport ships, begin landing." "Operations," Jake ordered. "Get our people off that planet." The next 4 hours were chaos. Jake's ships fought desperately against waves of Zerathi defenders, while transport vessels raced to and from Earth's surface, loading refugees as fast as they could. Amy coordinated the evacuation from the medical bay, treating wounded from both the battle and the prison camps. Her voice came through the intercom regularly with updates. "First million evacuees are aboard and stable. These people are in bad shape, Jake. Malnutrition, psychological trauma, experimental scarring. But they're alive and they're free." The battle was going better than Jake had dared hope. The Resistance fleet's coordination was overwhelming the Dominion forces. But then Danny's voice cut through the combat chatter. "Captain, long-range sensors are picking up the Dominion reinforcements. 5,000 ships arriving in 2 hours instead of 6. They must have been closer than we thought." Jake's heart sank. They had evacuated less than half of Earth's population. If they retreated now, over 1 billion humans would be left behind. But if they stayed to fight 5,000 fresh enemy ships, how many people are still on the surface? Jake asked. Amy's voice was strained. "At least 800 million, sir. The transport ships can't move any faster." Rick looked at the tactical display showing the approaching enemy fleet. "Captain, we can't fight that many ships. Our forces are already taking heavy casualties." Jake stared at Earth on the main screen. So close to success, but not close enough. 800 million people who would die because he couldn't save them all. Then Lisa's voice came from engineering, excited despite the desperate situation. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy buildup from the quantum drive. The battle damage and constant use have created a resonance cascade." "In simple terms," Lisa, Jake said, "the drive is about to explode, sir, but if I can control the explosion, channel it through the quantum communication network, I might be able to create a space-time disruption that affects the entire solar system." "What kind of disruption?" "I'm not sure exactly, but it would scatter any ships in the area across multiple dimensions, including the Dominion reinforcements." Jake understood immediately. It would save Earth and strand the enemy fleet in other realities. But the Defiant would be at the center of the explosion. They would be destroyed, or worse, scattered across space and time themselves. "How long do we have?" Jake asked. "Maybe 30 minutes before the drive goes critical, whether we want it to or not." Jake looked around his bridge at the crew that had followed him through impossible battles for over a year. These people had become more than soldiers, they were his family. "All hands, this is the captain," Jake announced over the ship-wide intercom. "In 30 minutes, we're going to save Earth by doing something that's never been tried before. Anyone who wants to evacuate to another ship has 20 minutes to get to the shuttle bays." Nobody moved from their stations. Danny turned in his chair. "Sir, where would we go? We've come this far together." Lisa's voice came through the speaker from engineering. "Besides, someone needs to stay and make sure this works properly. Wouldn't want to accidentally blow up our own fleet." Rick checked his weapons one more time. "And someone needs to keep shooting at the bad guys until the very end." Amy emerged from the medical bay, her uniform stained with the blood of countless patients she had saved. "The wounded are all on transport ships, but my place is here with my crew." Jake felt tears in his eyes. These people had become legends, heroes who would be remembered as long as humans existed. And they were choosing to stay with him for one final mission. "All right then," Jake said, his voice steady despite his emotions. "Let's go save our world." The Defiant turned toward Earth as the quantum drive began to tear apart reality around them. Behind them, 5,000 Dominion ships dropped out of hyperspace, ready to crush the human rebellion once and for all. But they were about to learn that humans had one more surprise waiting for them. The final gambit was about to begin. The space around the Defiant began to twist and bend as the quantum drive reached critical failure. Jake watched reality fracture on the main screen, showing impossible colors and shapes that hurt to look at directly. "Lisa, report!" Jake called over the growing noise of the collapsing drive. "Energy cascade is building beyond all calculations." Lisa's voice came through the speaker, strained but determined. "I can channel it through the communication network to every ship in our fleet, then redirect it outward when the Dominion reinforcements arrive." The 5,000 enemy ships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, confident that they would easily crush the human rebellion. Their commanders had no idea they were flying into a trap that would reshape the laws of physics themselves. "All resistance ships, this is Morrison," Jake broadcast to the fleet. "Fall back to minimum safe distance. What happens next is going to get very strange." As the Allied ships pulled away, Jake could see the confusion on the Dominion vessels. They had expected a desperate final battle, not a retreat. The Zarathi commanders probably thought the humans had finally realized they were beaten. "Captain," Danny said from his navigation station, "the quantum field is affecting our instruments. I'm not sure what I'm reading. Space and time are becoming unstable." Through the main screen, Jake watched as stars began to shift position. The familiar constellations of Earth's sky twisted into new patterns as the quantum cascade spread outward from the Defiant. "Sir," Rick reported, "the Dominion fleet is trying to retreat, but their ships are moving in slow motion. The time distortion is affecting them more than us." "Why aren't we affected the same way?" Jake asked. Lisa's voice crackled through the intercom. "We're at the center of the storm. The quantum field is protecting us even as it destroys us. I think we're becoming part of it." Jake felt a strange sensation, as if he was becoming lighter. Looking at his hands, he could see through them to the deck plating below. The same thing was happening to his crew. They were becoming transparent, fading in and out of normal space. "Amy, are you reading this?" Jake called. "Medical scanners are going crazy," Amy replied from somewhere that sounded very far away. "Our molecular structure is changing. We're still alive, but we're not entirely physical anymore." The Dominion fleet had realized something was terribly wrong. Their ships were trying to flee, but the quantum cascade was faster than their engines. One by one, the enemy vessels began to stretch and twist as they were pulled into different dimensions. "It's working," Danny said, his voice echoing strangely. "The enemy fleet is being scattered across parallel realities. Some are being sent backward in time, others forward. A few are disappearing completely." Jake watched in amazement as 5,000 warships simply vanished from normal space. The largest military force in galactic history had been defeated not by superior weapons but by human determination to do the impossible. "Lisa, can you stabilize our condition?" Jake asked. "Are we going to survive this?" There was a long pause before Lisa answered. "Captain, I don't think we're going to die, but I don't think we're going to live in the normal sense either. We're becoming something new, something that exists between dimensions." As the quantum storm reached its peak, Jake felt his consciousness expand beyond the confines of his physical body. He could sense every ship in the resistance fleet, every human on Earth, every being in the galaxy that yearned for freedom. He was connected to all of them through the quantum network. And then he understood. This wasn't an ending, it was a transformation. The Defiant and her crew weren't being destroyed. They were becoming guardians of freedom itself, able to appear wherever tyranny threatened, whenever the impossible needed to be achieved. "Danny," Jake said, though his voice now seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Scan Earth. Are our people safe?" "Sir," The planet is completely liberated. All processing facilities are destroyed. The remaining Dominion forces are surrendering or fleeing. 2 billion humans are free. Through his expanded awareness, Jake could feel the joy of liberated Earth, the celebration on resistance ships, the hope spreading across the galaxy as news of the victory traveled from world to world. But he could also sense other places where freedom was under threat. Distant planets where tyrannical governments oppressed their people. Space battles where small groups fought against impossible odds. Moments throughout history and across dimensions where someone needed help to do what seemed impossible. "Crew, do you understand what's happened to us?" Jake asked. Amy's voice came from the quantum field around them. "We've become legends, haven't we? Not just stories, but actual legends that can help people when they need us most." "The Defiant isn't just a ship anymore," Rick added. "It's an idea. The idea that you never give up no matter what." Lisa's voice was filled with wonder. "I'm seeing the quantum mathematics now. We exist in all realities simultaneously. We can appear wherever and whenever we're needed most." Jake felt the rightness of it. They had started as one damaged ship refusing to surrender. They had become the spark that ignited a galaxy-wide revolution. Now they would be the eternal guardians of that revolutionary spirit. "Then let's get to work," Jake said. The Defiant began to fade from normal space, but not into nothingness. They were becoming part of the fabric of reality itself, ready to emerge whenever freedom needed champions. On Earth, children looked up at the stars and swore they could see a ship outlined in the quantum distortions. Parents told stories of the crew that had come back for them when all hope was lost. The legend was already beginning. Years passed. The galaxy changed. The Dominion collapsed as species after species threw off their oppression, inspired by humanity's example. New civilizations were born, founded on principles of freedom and cooperation rather than domination. But sometimes when small groups faced overwhelming odds, when the innocent needed protection from the powerful, when someone had to do the impossible, a ship would appear out of nowhere. The USS Defiant, crewed by heroes who had chosen to fight rather than surrender. A teacher named Kate Rogers would rally her students to resist alien occupation and find that phantom weapons had mysteriously appeared in their supply closets. Pilot named Ben Rodriguez would face an enemy fleet alone and discover that his instruments were showing him targeting solutions that shouldn't have been possible. A young girl trapped in a prison camp would hear Jake Morrison's voice telling her to be brave, that rescue was coming, and would find the camp's security systems had mysteriously failed. The Defiant had become more than a ship. It had become proof that the universe favored the brave, that freedom was worth any sacrifice, and that humans would always come back for their own. In schools, across 1,000 worlds, children of dozens of species learned the story, how humanity was doomed to fall. But one ship chose to fight to the end. How that choice saved not just humanity, but the very idea of freedom itself. And somewhere in the quantum foam between realities, Captain Jake Morrison and his crew continued their eternal patrol, ready to appear whenever someone needed to be reminded that the impossible was just another word for not tried yet. The legend lived on, and freedom burned bright across the galaxy, guarded by heroes who had chosen to become something greater than themselves. The war was over. The watch had just begun.